Most people assume financial stability comes from earning more money. That sounds logical. If your income rises, your financial stress should fall. And yet, when researchers look closely at household finances, they keep finding something unexpected. A large share of high-income earners are still living paycheck to paycheck. In recent years, surveys have repeatedly shown that even households making well into six figures often feel financial pressure, struggle to save, and worry about surprise expenses. At the same time, there are people with much more modest incomes who seem unusually steady. They're not wealthy, they're not retiring at 40, they're not posting investment screenshots on social media. But they rarely face financial emergencies. They handle downturns better than most, and they sleep more easily when uncertainty shows up. The difference is usually not intelligence. It is not luck, and it is not always income. More often than people realize, it comes down to a few minimalist money rules. When people hear the word minimalist, they often picture someone in a tiny apartment with 20 possessions and no furniture. But financial minimalism is something else entirely. It is not about deprivation. It is about stripping away complexity, reducing unnecessary risk, and building a financial system that stays solid even when life gets messy. And that brings us to a deeper question. What if financial stability had less to do with maximizing wealth and more to do with minimizing vulnerability? Once you start viewing money through that lens, many conventional financial habits begin to look very different. One of the biggest misconceptions in personal finance is that stability comes from optimization. People spend huge amounts of time trying to maximize investment returns, chase credit card rewards, find the perfect budgeting app, or uncover the best side hustle. These things are not inherently bad. Some of them can even be useful, but optimization is often mistaken for stability. A system can be highly optimized and still be extremely fragile. Consider a business that keeps almost no cash reserves because every dollar is pushed toward maximum efficiency. On paper, the numbers may look impressive, but when even a small disruption hits, the whole system can start to fall apart. The same idea applies to personal finance. Financially stable people often follow a deceptively simple rule. They create margin. Margin is the space between what you earn and what you spend. It is the gap between your obligations and your resources. It is the financial equivalent of having extra time before a deadline or extra fuel in an airplane tank. Researchers studying financial stress have found that a sense of stability is often tied less to total income and more to the amount of available financial slack in a household. In other words, two families earning the same income can experience very different levels of stress, depending on how much margin they have in their finances. This leads to the first minimalist rule: protect your margin at all costs. Not because saving money is morally better, but because margin gives you room for uncertainty. And uncertainty is an expense everyone eventually faces. The second rule is even more counterintuitive. Reduce fixed expenses before you cut discretionary spending. Most budgeting advice zeroes in on small daily purchases: coffee, streaming subscriptions, restaurant meals. Those expenses are easy to see, which makes them easy to blame. But economists have long recognized that fixed expenses often shape financial outcomes far more than variable spending does. Housing, transportation, insurance, and debt payments create recurring obligations that stay in place no matter what happens. If someone loses income, those costs do not bend. That creates what economists call financial rigidity. Imagine two people earning the same salary. One takes on a luxury apartment, a new car, and a collection of monthly commitments. The other chooses a slightly smaller home, a dependable used car, and fewer recurring obligations. The first person may look more successful. The second person is often more secure. What looks like sacrifice on the surface is often flexibility underneath. And flexibility matters because conditions change, jobs change, health changes, industries change, life changes. The less money that is permanently spoken for, the more options remain open. That reveals a hidden truth about financial stability. Many people focus on earning more while overlooking the value of preserving optionality. But optionality is one of the most valuable assets money can buy. The third minimalist rule is to avoid confusing lifestyle inflation with real progress. This is where many financial plans quietly fall apart. When income goes up, spending often rises with it. Economists call this the hedonic treadmill. People adapt quickly to better circumstances, so yesterday's luxury soon becomes today's normal. The issue is not that people enjoy nicer things. The issue is that every upgrade resets the baseline. A bigger house feels exciting at first, then it becomes the standard. A luxury car feels special, then it becomes expected. The result is a strange paradox. Income rises, but financial freedom barely improves. In some cases, financial pressure actually gets worse. What people often see as wealth building is really just expense building. The minimalist alternative is not to reject every upgrade. It is to become far more selective. The question changes from, "Can I afford this?" to, "Will this improve my long-term stability enough to justify its permanent cost?" Those are very different questions. One measures buying power, the other measures resilience. And during uncertain times, resilience usually matters more than status. The fourth rule may be the most important of all. Own fewer financial obligations. Notice the wording, not fewer possessions. Fewer obligations. Many financial decisions create future commitments. Loans, financing agreements, subscription services, memberships, payment plans, long-term contracts. Each one may seem manageable on its own. The problem comes when they pile up. Psychologists who study cognitive load have found that obligations use up mental bandwidth, even when they are not causing immediate problems. Every recurring payment becomes something that has to be maintained, something that depends on future income, something that quietly increases your reliance on continued earnings. This is one reason financially stable people often seem cautious with debt. Not because debt is always bad, debt can be useful. Mortgages help people buy homes. Business loans can open doors. Education can increase your earning potential. But every obligation reduces your future flexibility. Minimalist money management recognizes that obligations are more than financial costs. They are future commitments. And future commitments carry risk. The fifth rule is surprisingly simple. Make financial decisions that still hold up when things go wrong. Many financial plans assume ideal conditions: steady employment, strong markets, good health, predictable expenses. Reality rarely cooperates. History is full of reminders. Recessions happen, markets fall, unexpected medical bills appear, entire industries change. Financial stability is not built on assuming everything will go right. It comes from accepting that sooner or later something will go wrong. That mindset changes how people make decisions. Instead of asking whether a purchase is affordable today, they ask whether it will still be manageable in a difficult year. Instead of asking whether an investment might deliver the highest return, they ask whether they can emotionally handle its risks. Instead of building plans around best-case scenarios, they build them around real uncertainty. This approach may seem less ambitious. In practice, it is often far more sustainable. And sustainability is easy to overlook because its benefits are invisible. People notice dramatic successes. They rarely notice disasters that were avoided. Yet avoiding financial catastrophe often creates more long-term wealth than chasing extraordinary gains. That leads us to the final minimalist rule. Prioritize simplicity before sophistication. The financial industry often rewards complexity. There are endless products, strategies, accounts, and systems promising better results. Some are useful. Many are not necessary. Behavioral finance research repeatedly shows that complexity can make follow-through harder. People are more likely to stick with simple systems than complicated ones. A simple savings plan that runs consistently for 20 years will often outperform an elaborate strategy that gets abandoned after 18 months. A straightforward investment approach that is funded regularly tends to outperform sophisticated plans that are constantly being adjusted. Complexity creates friction. Friction reduces consistency, and consistency is still one of the strongest predictors of financial success. The irony is that many financially stable people don't have secret knowledge. They simply eliminate unnecessary variables. Their finances become easier to manage, easier to understand, and easier to sustain. Over time, those advantages compound. So when we return to the original question, what creates lasting financial stability? The answer is very different from what most people expect. Financial stability is not mainly a matter of income. Income matters, of course. Money solves a lot of problems. But stability comes from something deeper. It comes from creating margin instead of maximizing consumption, from cutting fixed expenses instead of just trimming small purchases, from resisting lifestyle inflation, from limiting obligations, from preparing for uncertainty, from choosing simplicity over unnecessary complexity. What makes these rules so powerful is that they all share one common principle. They reduce vulnerability. That's the hidden truth many people miss. Financially stable people are not always the ones with the highest incomes, the biggest portfolios, or the most luxurious lifestyles. More often, they're the ones whose financial systems can absorb shocks without falling apart. In a world that constantly pushes bigger, faster, and more, minimalist money rules offer a different mindset. They suggest that stability isn't built by endlessly adding more. Sometimes it's built by carefully taking things away. Removing obligations, removing complexity, removing unnecessary commitments, removing fragility. Because in the end, financial stability isn't really about predicting the future. It's about building a life strong enough to withstand a future you can't predict. And that may be the most valuable financial asset anyone can have.